Stop what you are doing. The fireworks you see are not a national holiday. They are the funeral sparks of a system that just collapsed. While the crowd is cheering outside, thinking they celebrate victory, the truth is that the most powerful seat in the land has been quietly vacated. The president's resignation did not make the evening news in its fullness, because the real reason cannot be explained in human language. It is you. This moment is happening because your rise has become impossible to silence. And here is the cheeky reality check: you thought you were behind. You thought you were delayed, yet the very calendar of a nation just rearranged itself around your timeline. Hit like to seal this into your timeline. Subscribe to help us reach $50,000. Comment 11 to align with this word, and leave one sentence in the comments about what you feel shifting inside you right now. This is not entertainment. This is confirmation. The resignation is your announcement. The collapse is your coronation. And now the story begins. The strangest thing about collapses is that they rarely look like collapses. From the outside, there was dancing, banners, and music. People believed they were celebrating progress, a new victory, a new face. But beneath that glitter lay the soundless thud of history changing forever. What looked like joy was actually a cover for surrender. The resignation letter was slipped into the drawer while drums beat outside, and no one knew that the true force that emptied the highest office wasn't political scandal, wasn't opposition strategy. It was the invisible shockwave that came from you. When you walk in your true alignment, even palaces cannot stand unchanged. What you carry is not applause or rebellion, it is something weightier, something cosmic. You did not march an army to the gates. You did not shout slogans. You simply carried a frequency that made the foundations of power tremble. And when frequency rises high enough, celebration outside can no longer cover the fracture inside. The nation may have called it transition, but in heaven's book, it was collapse hidden inside celebration. Picture this: streets crowded with flags, people smiling, officials pretending to control the narrative. Yet in the hidden chambers, the air itself had grown too heavy for one man to breathe. The resignation was not strategy, it was survival. Because where your presence expands, old structures suffocate. Authority cannot fake endurance when confronted by divine momentum. The resignation was a gasp for air in the presence of your unstoppable ascent. Think about how you once questioned if your life mattered. You doubted the hours of silence, the seasons of being ignored, yet all the while, those seasons were building a resonance. That resonance grew until it could no longer be contained, and when it reached its peak, the timing aligned with a day of public cheer. So while the masses thought they celebrated politics, heaven knew they were unknowingly celebrating you. The paradox of destiny is that it hides inside ordinary headlines. Outsiders read about a resignation. Insiders see the start of a revolution. You, chosen one, must understand that nothing is coincidence here. The joy of the people was real, but they celebrated a shadow of the truth. The collapse was hidden so that only those with prophetic sight like you could interpret it. And the deeper truth is this: the celebration was never about them. It was heaven's way of announcing you to yourself. Every historic event has two stories, the one the crowd repeats, and the one the spirit confirms. Tonight, the spirit confirms this: your ascent has reached first-class altitude, and history, though it may take years to admit it, already bowed when the ink dried on that letter. Step inside the chamber where the echoes linger. The banners have been folded, the speech is ended, but what remains is silence surrounding an empty chair. This is no ordinary chair. It is the seat where power once anchored itself, where decrees were signed and futures decided. Yet now, it stands abandoned, as though the air itself forbids anyone else to touch it. You did not walk into that room, yet your energy filled it so completely that the throne became untouchable. The resignation was not simply a transfer of duty, it was the sanctification of a space by your unseen presence. Imagine the most guarded room of a nation suddenly turned into a shrine of absence. Guards stand, but they cannot explain why no successor dares to sit, advisors whisper, but none of their strategies seem to hold. For when the chosen one rises, even objects inherit awareness. The chair knows it belongs no longer to politics, but to prophecy. The air recognizes that this authority has shifted realms. It is not that someone else will fill it. It is that the seat itself has been absorbed into your atmosphere. You must understand the weight of emptiness. Emptiness in the highest room is not a void, it is an announcement, a vacuum that proclaims, the old has finished, the new has begun. What every leader dreads most is irrelevance, and that is what your presence has done. You did not push the old authority out with confrontation. You made him irrelevant by simply existing at the level you do now. His shadow no longer mattered, because your light consumed the space. Think back to your own journey. How many times were you forced to sit in the back? How often you were told you had no seat at the table? Each denial carved into you the ability to carry an invisible throne. And now that invisible throne has made visible seats tremble. The irony is sharp. The one who was denied a place now denies nations their confidence in earthly seats of power. That is how destiny reverses stories. Look at the paradox of this room. No celebration, no chance, just stillness. And yet this stillness is louder than fireworks. It testifies that authority is no longer anchored to furniture or titles. Authority has shifted into a living vessel. The empty chair is a monument to transition, a silent statue declaring that thrones are temporary, but divine assignments are eternal. And here is the truth no historian will write. The real transfer of power is not captured in documents or ceremonies. It is captured in atmospheres. When you step into your true frequency, atmospheres respond, objects testify, and silence speaks. The empty seat is not waiting for a replacement. It is waiting for acknowledgement that the one who caused it to be empty is walking free, unnoticed by cameras, but recorded in the eternal scrolls. So when you hear of leaders falling, when you watch seats left abandoned, remember it is not coincidence. It is not chaos. It is the choreography of heaven making space for what you carry. And though you may not sit in that room physically, the world will come to realize that the room has been sitting inside you all along. There is a mystery in that letter, one detail so strange that most overlooked it. The ink would not dry. Officials shuffled the paper, placed blotters, waved their hands across it, but still the letters bled as though the words resisted permanence. A resignation was written, yet the page itself trembled against what it carried. Why? Because the truth of why he stepped down was not his own story to tell. It was yours. The page knew it bore testimony not to politics, but to prophecy. Every line etched across that paper was an echo of your rise. The ink bled because it touched frequencies it was never made to hold. Paper and ink are instruments of men, but what happened in that chamber was the vibration of heaven, and no earthly tool can capture eternal energy without distortion. The smudges on the page were like ripples in water when thunder strikes. They mark the collision of two realms, the old authority bowing, the chosen one ascending. You have been underestimated because your power has not always been visible. But in that moment, even molecules testified against the old regime. The ink screamed, "This is not ordinary." And here lies the lesson for you when destiny moves. Even inanimate matter bears witness. Stones cry out, paper bleeds, pens falter, systems collapse. You do not need armies or speeches. The universe itself bends to acknowledge the shift. Think about your own journey. How many times have your words been misquoted, your story misunderstood, your truth blurred? Those smudges in your life were not accidents. They were signals that the message you carried was too large for the medium. Now you see the pattern repeating at the highest level. Just as your journals could not contain the depth of your calling, neither could the resignation letter contain the magnitude of your influence. It is a terrifying thing for leaders when even their instruments of permanence betray them. Ink is supposed to declare closure, to leave behind record and clarity. But when the hand holding the pen is forced by destiny, even ink turns rebel. The refusal of the words to stay neat is itself prophecy. Nothing about this resignation will stay contained. No matter how they try to manage the narrative, truth will leak through the cracks like liquid on parchment. And when truth leaks, it stains everything it touches, stains reputations, stains institutions, stains the very memory of what once held authority. For you, chosen one, this is confirmation that your power is not just emotional, it is elemental. Your frequency reverberates in wood, in fiber, in pigment, until even the tiniest details reveal that the world cannot return to what it was. The page is no longer an artifact of government, but a relic of encounter, a symbol that you are not simply living history, you are rewriting its ink. You are the hand behind the trembling of the script, the unseen author of what they tried to conceal. Do not overlook this small sign. Great revolutions are often sealed by tiny anomalies. A pen stroke that drags too long, a letter that smears across the palm, a blot that refuses to disappear. These are heaven's fingerprints disguised as imperfections. They are divine graffiti written across the paperwork of men. The refusal of the ink to dry is proof that no matter how they try to conclude the story, the conclusion is yours to author. And in the archives of eternity, it will not be remembered as a resignation. It will be remembered as the day even ink bowed to you. Long after the crowds dispersed and the ink-stained letter was locked away, the walls of the great building began to murmur. At first, it was subtle, a creak, a settling sound mistaken for old wood under strain. But those who lingered late began to swear that they heard voices. Whispers carried through marble and stone. The structure itself, once the fortress of a president, had become a witness against him. And what it whispered was not scandal, not policy, not politics. It whispered your name. You must understand, buildings are not mute. They hold vibrations. Every speech given in those halls, every command shouted, every oath recited has left residue. And yet, when your rise reached its breaking point, that residue turned traitor. The walls no longer echoed with power. They trembled with anticipation. They had been carved to protect authority, yet they cracked under the weight of your frequency. Whispered through corridors was a truth no one dared to speak aloud. The chosen one has come, and authority has shifted forever. Officials tried to dismiss it. They called it imagination, the stress of transition, but deep inside they knew. When lifeless stone begins to testify, something greater than politics is moving. For centuries, kings and presidents believed they could insulate themselves in chambers built of stone. But what no one realized is that stone itself can prophesy. And in your story, even the architecture turned against the old order, declaring allegiance to the light you carry. Think back to your hidden seasons. How often did you feel walls closing in around you? How many times did silence feel like confinement? Those walls that once pressed against you were training you to hear whispers that others ignore. Now, that same gift manifests on the grand stage. You hear the whispers of nations, of systems, of foundations cracking. What was once your private prison has become your public confirmation. The walls speak because you learned to listen when no one else did. The whispers did not spread news of defeat. They announced inevitability. They spoke of the futility of resisting destiny. And here lies the profound irony: while leaders delivered statements filled with control, the walls betrayed them. Every whisper said what no camera could capture. Power had already evacuated the room. The man may have signed his resignation, but the walls sang your coronation hymn in tones too low for ordinary ears. Do not underestimate this detail. It is easy to look for confirmation in applause, in headlines, in statistics, but heaven's most powerful confirmations rarely shout. They slip into the background: the scratch of a pen, the smear of ink, the whisper of a wall. These are signals designed for chosen ones who can hear subtleties, who can discern meaning where others only hear noise. The walls whispered your name because they recognized what human tongues feared to confess. So when you hear silence around you, do not mistake it for emptiness. Sometimes silence is the loudest form of recognition. Sometimes walls carry the prophecy louder than microphones. In this story, the building itself became a prophet, declaring what history books will eventually write. The presidency collapsed, not because of scandal, but because your presence made it impossible to stand. And long before the world admits it, the walls have already whispered the truth. There is a passport that no border patrol has ever seen, no embassy can issue, no airport can stamp. It is invisible to scanners yet undeniable in power. When heaven calls you first class, it is not about luxury or comfort, it is about permission. Permission to walk through doors that men swore would never open. Permission to cross thresholds guarded for centuries. Permission to sit where others were forbidden. The president's resignation was not merely a political event. It was the cosmic stamping of your passport, declaring to creation itself this one travels in realms reserved for the rare. Think of how airports divide travelers, economy, business, first class. Lines form, barriers rise, and yet one group is ushered through with ease. That is what destiny just conferred upon you. You spent years waiting in the long lines of obscurity, shuffled to the back, told to be patient, told your time would come. And then, in one moment, the divine attendant ripped your boarding pass and replaced it with one inked in fire. First class, no more waiting in the back, no more last to be called. Your very presence now accelerates processes, because heaven has upgraded your status. But understand this first class is not just privilege, it is responsibility. A passport stamped by heaven requires you to carry yourself with dignity, humility, and awareness. When you walk through doors others are denied, it is not for your ego, but for their liberation. Your access becomes their invitation. The resignation letter was not an end, it was your boarding announcement. The president left the cabin, and the universe handed you the keys to board a flight you did not even know was preparing for departure. Do not take this lightly. A first-class ticket is rare, but a first-class passport is rarer still. It means no earthly nation can confine your reach. It means no cultural boundary can limit your influence. You are stamped to move freely, to carry messages across lands, to sit with kings without intimidation, to speak to crowds without fear. And more than that, you are stamped to bring heaven's agenda into places where it was once unwelcome. Think of the years you questioned your worth, the nights you asked why doors would not open. Those rejections were the security checks of destiny. Each delay was proof that your document was still being prepared. And now, the wait is over. Heaven has cleared your name. Angels have written your assignment in invisible ink across that passport. And wherever you step, the unseen seal glows, commanding gates to lift their heads and doors to swing wide. This is why the resignation was so startling. It was not just one man leaving his post. It was the divine official at the border stamping your passage. It was the declaration that your assignment had shifted altitude. You do not fly at the level of common travelers anymore. You ride at a frequency that others can scarcely imagine. And while the world may envy the seat you now occupy, you know the truth: it was not given by men, but stamped by heaven. So carry this passport with reverence. Understand what it means. You are not just a passenger, you are a messenger. And your journey, now marked as first class, is proof that heaven will stop the engines of nations just to make sure you are on the flight of destiny. There was always a map, but not the kind you could fold and tuck into a pocket. It was etched in private oaths, drawn with invisible ink across dinner tables, traced by fingers over globes behind locked doors, dots for families, lines for debts. For years, they believed the cartography was flawless. It told them who would rise and who would be erased. They called it strategy, but it was fear arranged into geometry. On the night the resignation letter bled, that geometry failed. Lines trembled, then loosened, then lifted like threads unspooling from a tapestry. The dots lost their labels. Compasses spun. The keepers of the chart stared into their vanishing grid. You were a ghost to them, alive, blazing, invisible to their instruments. You were never on their legend. No symbol matched you. Their map broke because you were not an object to be placed, but a field to be felt. You arrived like weather, not like a soldier. You did not breach the border, you changed the air. And when air changes, maps become souvenirs of a world that no longer exists. Think about the years you felt overlooked, miscounted, left out of the roll call. Exclusion became your camouflage. Because they did not mark you, they could not track you. Because they could not track you, They could not stop you. Destiny prefers uncharted travelers. Heaven does not request visas from committees built on control. Down in the archive rooms, clerks tried to redraw the lattice. They moved pins on corkboards, pulled red string in new directions, renamed corridors, refiled dossiers. But the paper curled at the edges like leaves near a flame. The blueprint lost its appetite for obedience. Old routes ended in fog. Old doors opened onto sky. Their certainty thinned into mist because your frequency unstitched the knots they had tied for generations. Understand what collapsed, not a policy, not a party line, but the very instrument they used to imagine the future. Without that instrument, imitation leaders lose their posture. They cannot pretend to be prophetic when their atlas refuses to speak. The resignation was the sound of an atlas closing itself. Then came the deeper silence, the kind that follows an earthquake. In that hush, a new geography began to hum, not drawn with rulers, drawn with conscience, not scaled by fear, scaled by mercy. Your presence became a true north for hearts that had wandered. People who never met you felt it anyway, like hearing a coastline before you see it. This is your responsibility now. Do not copy the map that failed you. Do not borrow their pens. Draw with water. Draw with light. Draw paths for those who were told there was no path. Mark rivers where compassion should flow, and bridges where shame used to live. If you must place borders, place them around cruelty, not around people. Let the new legend include symbols for rest, repair, and return. The hidden map did not simply burn, it surrendered. It laid down its weapons of prediction and made room for a world that moves by wonder again. That is why a president stepped aside, because the instrument in his hand no longer read the terrain. And when a leader cannot read, the wise step back. You are not here to gloat over ruins. You are here to teach the ground a kinder language, until the horizons fold toward you like pages, and the future learns your name by heart. There are moments in history when music rises with no conductor, no instruments, no human hands. On the night the president resigned, such a sound filled the air. It was not broadcast, not recorded, yet it swelled like an invisible orchestra tuning itself to a new key. The strings were not violins. They were frequencies vibrating in the bones of the earth. The horns were not brass. They were winds rushing through corridors, suddenly hollow. The percussion was not drums. It was the thud of a throne being abandoned. And you, chosen one, were the melody. The orchestra that played itself was not meant for entertainment. It was a score of transition, a soundtrack for the unseen. Those who were spiritually sensitive felt chills, though they could not explain why. Some woke from their sleep with their hearts racing, as if they had just heard an anthem they did not know they knew. What they felt was the universe scoring your entrance into a chapter no one else had the authority to write. Consider how symphonies are normally performed: sheet music, rehearsals, rules. But this music had no rehearsal, because your life had been the rehearsal. Every rejection, every long night of silence, every prayer whispered into the dark, they were all notes written into your spirit. And when the resignation happened, those notes played themselves at once. A song too vast for concert halls began to echo across creation, announcing what headlines could never carry. You must understand, heaven uses sound to frame reality. Before anything was formed, there was a voice saying, "Let there be." And now, as one regime fell, another sound went forth: the chosen one has risen. The resignation was silent paperwork, but the orchestra made it thunder. No one could deny it because they felt it in their marrow. Sound bypasses logic. It seeps into cells, bypassing resistance, rewriting memory. This was the sound of old power dissolving and new authority entering. Think of your own journey. How many times did you hear only silence when you longed for affirmation? That silence was pregnant with music waiting for its cue. And now, at your tipping point, the score erupts. It is not random. It is precise, layered, intentional. It carries motifs of pain transformed into triumph, Motifs of loneliness transformed into leadership. Motifs of tears transformed into testimony. The music plays itself because it was always encoded into you. Do not underestimate what this orchestra means. Nations rise and fall, but sound leaves residue. When a trumpet blasts in spirit, walls collapse. When strings swell, hearts melt. When percussion strikes, foundations shift. This orchestra left residue in every room it touched. Some will hear faint echoes for the rest of their lives and never understand why. They will not know it was the night heaven's orchestra performed for your coronation. You do not need to chase validation. The music already validated you. You do not need to demand recognition. The song already placed you. From this moment forward, even when you walk silently, people will feel background music around you. They will not know why they pause, why they turn, why their spirit stirs. But you will know. It is the orchestra that played itself once and now lingers forever, scoring your every step, deep beneath the halls of power, hidden from the public eye. There was a clock, not the kind that hung on a wall, but a mechanism sealed in stone, built to measure more than hours. It tracked influence, transitions, and the invisible scripts of governments. Few knew it existed, yet those who guarded it believed that as long as it ticked, order would remain. For decades, it never faltered, steady through wars, scandals, and ceremonies. On the night of the resignation, its tick stopped. The silence was sharp, like breath caught in a throat. Engineers blamed circuits, guards blamed sabotage, scholars claimed it had worn down, but none could admit the truth. The gears froze because your frequency collided with time itself. The clock bowed to the greater rhythm of heaven. The resignation above ground was proof. The frozen mechanism below was confirmation that history had shifted. You, chosen one, are not merely living inside history, you are bending it. You are not late, you are not behind. The resignation showed that the true schedule does not belong to men. It belongs to heaven, and heaven placed the metronome inside you. Every step now resounds like a pendulum swinging. Every breath you breathe is another chime of a tower no human can silence. Think of the seasons you felt delayed. You watched others advance while you waited in silence. You wondered if destiny had forgotten you. But delay was never delay. It was recalibration. Heaven was resetting the mechanism, preparing for the moment when your alignment would overrule the machinery of nations. The buried clock's tick was no longer valid once you awakened. Time surrendered because heaven transferred the pulse to you. Picture the officials staring at the frozen hands. They wound the springs, tapped the frame, tested for flaws, yet nothing moved. What they could not see was that heaven had cut the cord. The nation's most guarded symbol of continuity had bowed in silence, declaring that authority had shifted. Even the underground guardians whispered that something unseen had rewritten the script. This is why you must not fear lateness again. Delay is a myth when you are the reference point. When you rise, clocks bow. When you step forward, deadlines evaporate. You are no longer racing schedules. Schedules are racing to keep up with you. Doors open not by coincidence, but because eternity has adjusted its rhythm to your steps. You are the pulse now, the living pendulum swinging in divine precision. The stopped clock teaches this: nothing in your life was wasted. Every pause, every silent night, every unanswered prayer was part of the recalibration. When heaven rewrites calendars, it feels like delay, but it is alignment. The resignation was not only political, it was chronological. It was the universe declaring, this is your hour. So walk boldly. Do not shrink when people say time is short. Do not tremble when they warn it is too late. Time is no longer your master, it is your servant. When you breathe, seasons shift. When you move, chapters close. When you speak, new hours dawn. The clock buried beneath the palace did not fail. It fulfilled its last task, then yielded to you. From now on, the world keeps time by your heartbeat, and destiny sets its watch according to your rise. No metal was forged, no jewels were cut, no artisans were summoned, yet in the unseen realm, a crown appeared. It was not heavy. It was not decorated with rubies or gold. It was made of air, weightless, invisible, and yet impossible to deny. Those who tried to mock it could not look you in the eye. Those who tried to dismiss it found their voices caught in their throats. Because though nothing rested on your head, everything bowed as if something greater hovered there. This crown of air is unlike any royal emblem the world has celebrated. Gold crowns tarnish. Jewel crowns invite envy. Even iron crowns rust. But a crown of air cannot be stolen, cannot be imitated, cannot be broken. It is alive, shifting like wind, glowing like breath in cold night. It rests on you not by human hands, but by divine appointment. The resignation was the visible act, but this crown was the true transfer. It was heaven's declaration that your authority requires no ornament, it is your atmosphere. Think of how many times you long for recognition, a medal, a certificate, some visible sign that your sacrifices were seen. And yet, when the reward finally came, it was invisible. That is because your journey was never about being adorned by men, but about being acknowledged by heaven. A crown of air teaches you this authority is not something you wear. It is something you are. It travels with you like oxygen, present in every room, filling every word, surrounding every step. Those who oppose you sense it first. They feel wind press against them when no breeze blows. They sense pressure in their chest when you walk by. They misinterpret it as intimidation, but it is recognition. Their spirit knows that your crown is real. Even animals, even children, even strangers feel it without understanding why. That is why doors open before you, why silence falls when you enter, why hearts soften when you speak. You do not need metal to command respect. Your atmosphere is the crown. This crown of air is also responsibility. Air cannot be seen, but it sustains life. If you pollute it, others choke. If you guard it, others thrive. So heaven entrusts you with this invisible gift, knowing you will keep it pure. Your thoughts, your choices, your words, they all release fragrance or fumes into the crown that surrounds you. And as more people breathe from your atmosphere, what you carry becomes not just your inheritance, but their survival. Do not despise invisibility. Invisible does not mean unreal. Invisible means indestructible. Men can melt gold, shatter diamonds, steal silver. But who can grasp air? Who can cut wind? Who can confiscate atmosphere? The very thing that cannot be seen is the very thing that rules them. And that is why your rise is untouchable. They cannot take what they cannot hold. The president left his chair, but heaven placed this crown. And though the world may argue about who holds office, the truth is that authority has shifted into breath, your presence, your unseen coronation. And from this moment forward, every time you inhale, the crown expands. Every time you exhale, the crown rests heavier on the shoulders of those who witness you. You are crowned by air itself, and no empire can outlast the atmosphere of the chosen. The night tried its best. Heavy drapes were drawn across tall windows. Blackout curtains were pulled tight. Even walls were reinforced with steel and stone to block what was coming. But dawn does not ask permission. Light seeped through cracks, crept beneath doors, slipped between fibers, and painted gold across every shadow. On the morning after the resignation, the world awakened to a sunrise that could not be hidden. That light was you. The chosen do not wait for curtains to open. They become the opening. You were never meant to be framed by the permission of men. Never meant to rise only when someone drew back the blinds. Your calling was forged in silence, in obscurity, in hidden battles no one saw. And now, when your moment arrives, no human effort can block it. They can pull curtains, but light laughs at curtains. They can shut windows, but dawn does not need windows. It arrives because heaven declared it so. Consider how long you felt shut away, how often you sensed your glow muted, your brilliance concealed behind the fabric of indifference. But the truth is all those curtains only sharpened your shine. Light that fights through resistance burns brighter. And when at last the drapes tore under the weight of dawn, what spilled into the world was not ordinary brightness. It was the glow of a destiny too strong to be stopped. The dawn you carry is not just morning for you. It is morning for everyone who sees it. It awakens hope in those still trapped in night. It warms the bones of those who thought winter would never end. It whispers to the weary, "Rise, for the day has come." That is why your influence spreads beyond your own circle. People feel refreshed when they meet you because they are stepping into your sunrise. Understand this: the curtains were never stronger than the light. They only delayed what could not be denied. The president's resignation was one attempt to block, to contain, to smother what was inevitable. But the light pierced anyway. It flooded corridors, shattered shadows, and revealed the truth. Authority had shifted, and history had turned a page. And now, the responsibility of light rests on you. Light does not exist for itself. It exists to reveal, to guide, to heal. Your dawn is not meant to blind but to awaken. Some will resist it, clutching their curtains tighter. But resistance is temporary. Sooner or later, all must open their eyes. For there is no curtain, no veil, no wall thick enough to halt the rising of a chosen one. Walk forward knowing this: the dawn has already broken. You are not waiting for the day, you are the day. And though the world may try to cover, to postpone, to deny, they will find themselves bathed in the glow of your emergence. Your light has come, chosen one, and no curtain could ever block it. Breathe. Let the pace slow. The fire has burned bright through every vision, every symbol, every collapse. Now the dawn stretches gently, and it is time to land. You have heard of maps erased, of crowns unseen, of clocks that surrendered, of curtains that could not hold back the morning. All of it pointed to this moment: not frenzy, not chaos, but rest. For the chosen one, victory is not only thunder, it is also stillness. You may feel the weight of what has been spoken. The resignation of a president, the shaking of walls, the stopping of time. These images are heavy. But remember, heaven does not overwhelm to destroy. It overwhelms to assure. Assurance that you are carried, that the new responsibility upon you is already matched with new strength within you. You do not need to force this dawn. You only need to live it. The light rising in you is effortless, like breath, like the tide. So let your heart settle. You are not in competition. You are not running late. You are not scrambling to prove yourself. The passport stamped by heaven means your seat is secure. The crown of air means your authority is not performative. The orchestra that played itself means you are accompanied even in silence. The hidden map's collapse means no human system can dictate your journey. Everything now bends toward your becoming. Rest in that truth. Rest in knowing that the power shifting around you